The year was 1871, and the frontier wore its cruelty like a badge of honor. Dust swept in dry sheets across the ramshackle trading post, the boards moaning as if tired of holding up walls no one cared to mend. A wind carried the stench of horse sweat, cheap whiskey, and tobacco spit. Inside, men leaned at the bar, hats low, voices hushed, watching as if circling vultures had finally found their meal. He pushed through the doorway, shoulders stooped, a man hollowed out by years of losing. His boots were worn to the stitching, hat rim sagging from sun and rain. His face bore lines not of age alone, but defeats tallied one after another until nothing remained but skin over bone. His name was Samuel Cutter, once a rancher of good land and proud cattle. Tonight, he was no more than a man with a bundle of belongings and the last shred of pride clinging to him. The bundle landed with a thud on the table near the counter. Saddle, bridle, his battered rifle, the boots he slipped off with slow hands. The room turned quiet enough to hear the crackle of the lantern flame. Every eye weighed him, some with pity, others with that sharp gleam reserved for carrion. An old Apache elder stood there already, tall despite years that had bent his back, wrapped in a wool blanket patterned with red diamonds. His hair hung in silver braids, his eyes black and steady as obsidian. Cutter laid his rifle across the wood and spoke low, the rasp of thirst in his throat. $2, he said. The trader, a squat, greasy man with a ledger always open, snorted. For the lot? Ain't worth a dime. Cutter didn't argue. He slid the rifle closer, palms empty. The Apache elder's hand moved before the trader's, laying down 2 silver coins with motion slow and deliberate. They struck the wood with sharp ring that echoed through the stale air. Silence deepened. $2. That was the sum of man's life when the earth had taken his land. Raiders had taken his cattle, and fever had taken his wife and boy. Cutter didn't lift the coins. He just stared at them, then at the elder. Their eyes met, one broken, the other unreadable. The coins belonged to Cutter, yet it felt less a payment and more judgment. A laugh barked from a corner. Look at him. Sold his boots. Man ain't got nothing left but the dirt between his toes. Laughter spread like fire through dry grass. Cutter stood barefoot, the dust and whiskey-stained planks cold beneath his soles. He swallowed his pride like dry sand. Not a word left him. The Apache elder's face didn't shift, didn't soften. He only lifted the saddle with surprising strength for his age and carried it outside, leaving Cutter standing in the stink of mockery, coins glinting in front of him like a curse. Cutter left the trading post that evening with the coins burning hot in his pocket, as if $2 might set his soul aflame. He walked barefoot down the dirt track, past wagons creaking and mule drivers spitting curses, past children darting like shadows between barrels. Each step ground grit into his skin, a reminder the shame pressed deep into his bones. Behind him, laughter still spilled from the post, muffled but sharp, the kind of laughter men carried with them to bed so they could retell it over cards and whiskey. The story of Samuel Cutter, the rancher who fell so low he sold himself for less than a meal. He found no corner of shelter. The innkeeper turned him away with a smirk. The barn was locked, so he settled under the awning of a livery, back against the post, hat tilted low to shield his eyes. He pressed the coins into his palm, feeling their edges cut faint lines into his skin. $2. Enough to buy bread for a few days, maybe a bottle to drown in. Nothing more. Hoofbeats approached slow and steady. He looked up. The Apache elder stood before him, shadowed against a lantern glow. He carried nothing now but a strip of bread, coarse and rough, torn in half. The old man crouched, offered one piece. No words, no explanation. Cutter hesitated. Bread from Apache was a thing settlers whispered curses about, swearing it poisoned the soul, swearing it meant debts unpayable. Yet hunger gnawed his belly raw. He took it. Their hands touched, dry skin, rough palms. Something passed between them, quiet as dust shifting on a beam of light. The elder nodded once, then sat cross-legged in the dirt, eating his share without sound. Around them, passers-by stared and muttered. A white man and an Apache breaking bread in silence. Some spat on the ground. Others crossed themselves. Cutter chewed slow, tasting more than flour and ash. He tasted a weight he couldn't name, something that pressed against his chest harder than shame or hunger. The elders' warriors lingered at a distance, dark figures half-shrouded by night, their ponies restless. Eyes burned in the dark, fixed on Cutter. He felt their gaze pierce through him, weighing, judging. He couldn't tell if they saw weakness or courage, or perhaps both, tangled in one. When the bread was gone, the elder rose without a word, disappearing into shadow. The warriors followed, horses whispering away into the desert night. Cutter sat with crumbs on his palm, staring at the emptiness where they'd stood. He wondered why they had not laughed, why they had not mocked him like the others, why, instead, they had shared their bread. The desert wind grew colder as the night stretched on. Cutter lay flat on the hard ground, staring at a sky packed with stars. The Milky Way arched like a river of pale fire, too wide, too endless for a man to measure. He pulled his hat low, but sleep came jagged, broken by hunger and the sting of failure. A horse whinnied somewhere beyond the town, followed by another. He stirred, heart quickening. The rhythm of hooves carried across the land, not the drunken stagger of cowboys, but the steady cadence of riders moving with purpose. Dozens, maybe more. Cutter sat up, dust sticking to his skin. The sound grew, joined by a faint drumbeat that thudded to the ground into his bones. He rose to his feet, bare toes curling into the dirt. Out past the ridge, faint silhouettes shifted against starlight. Horses, riders, too many to count. He rubbed his eyes, thinking fatigue had conjured phantoms. But the sound deepened, rolled like thunder crawling closer. From the darkness, an owl called, then silence, then the whisper of voices carried on wind. Apache voices, chanting low, too distant to catch the words, but strong enough to chill his blood. He backed into the shadows of the livery post, heart hammering. Settlers had whispered for years of Apache war parties sweeping down with dawn, fire in their hands, arrows raining from the hills. But this felt different. The echo of hooves faded as if swallowed by the desert, leaving only the steady drum in Cutter's chest. He sank down again, back pressed to the wood, trembling from more than cold. He didn't know what the night would bring, but he knew the $2 in his pocket had bought something far greater than bread or whiskey. What it was, he could not yet name. But as he drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought lingered, sharper than all others. By dawn, history itself would stir. Samuel Cutter woke to the sharp cry of a raven and the weight of eyes on him. The sun was just cracking the horizon, slicing the sky with red and gold. His body ached from sleeping on bare ground, every muscle stiff, every rib pressing against skin. The taste of dust lingered in his mouth, and for a moment he forgot where he was. Then he saw them, Apache riders, not 2 or 3, but dozens, their ponies shifting in the rising light. They formed a semicircle beyond the livery, silent as carved stone. The same elder who had handed him bread the night before sat tall on a bay horse, his blanket draped like a banner across his shoulders. The riders did not move, did not speak. They only watched. Cutter rose slowly, barefoot on the dirt, his shirt clinging with sweat from the restless night. His first thought was capture. His second was death. His hand instinctively touched the pocket where the 2 silver coins burned like a curse. The townsfolk stirred now, drawn by the sight. Doors cracked open. Children peered from behind skirts. Men gathered near the saloon with rifles half raised but not yet aimed. A murmur spread through them like fire through dry sage. "What do they want with him?" someone whispered. Cutter swallowed. The elder lifted his chin, then pointed with 2 fingers toward a riderless horse. Its coat gleamed chestnut in the dawn, mane braided with leather strips. A command, not a request. Cutter hesitated. Every eye bore into him, settlers and Apache alike. His chest tightened. If he refused, would they cut him down where he stood? If he obeyed, what awaited him beyond the ridge? He stepped forward. Slow, careful. The chestnut snorted, hooves paw in the dirt as though sensing the weight of this moment. Cutter swung onto the saddle without boots, feeling raw hide bite into his soles. The horse shifted beneath him, muscles alive. The elder gave a single nod, and without a word, The Apache riders wheeled their mounts and began to move, their formation flowing like a river of shadows. Cutter followed, trapped in a current he could not fight. Behind him, the town whispered and cursed. Some spat, some prayed. The image they saw would become a story before sundown. A barefoot rancher riding off with the Apache, carried into a fate no white man returned from. They rode hard through the morning, leaving the settlement behind in a cloud of dust. The land opened wide, red rock cliffs rising like cathedral walls, the air sharp with pine and juniper, the cry of hawks circling above. Cutter kept his eyes on the back of the elder's horse, each hoofbeat pounding against a knot of fear in his chest. The riders spoke little, their language carried soft between them. Words Cutter could not catch. Their silence pressed on him heavier than chains. He felt stripped, judged, as though every mile deeper into their country weighed his worth. By midday, the sun burned high and cruel. They crossed a dry riverbed, its stones white as bone. The chestnut stumbled, nearly throwing Cutter. He clung hard, skin tearing against the reins. Laughter rippled among some of the younger warriors, short, sharp bursts, but the elders silenced them with a glance. They climbed a ridge, dust clinging to Cutter's throat, when suddenly the riders slowed. The elder raised a hand. Ahead stretched a river swollen from mountain rains, frothing white, its current wild and merciless. One by one, the warriors urged their ponies into the torrent, guiding them steady, precise. Cutter's horse balked, nostrils flaring, hooves striking stone. The water roared like a beast. Cutter felt the eyes again, dozens of them, waiting, testing. He gritted his teeth, spurred the horse. The chestnut plunged into the river, spray drenching Cutter's face, cold biting to the bone. The current ripped at them, dragging sideways. His grip slipped. Panic surged. The horse bucked against the pull, nearly toppling. Cutter's vision blurred as the river swallowed him whole, icy claws tearing him under. He fought, arms thrashing, lungs burning. The roar drowned all thought. He broke the surface once, gasping, then sank again. A hand seized his collar, iron-strong, pulling, dragging. He burst into air, coughing, sputtering, hauled by two warriors to the far bank. The horse had made it across alone, stamping and shivering. Cutter collapsed onto the sand, chest heaving, water streaming from his hair and beard. The warriors looked down, some sneering, others unreadable. One spat in the dirt beside him, muttering a word he didn't know. The elder dismounted, came forward. He crouched, staring at Cutter with those black, endless eyes. He said nothing, but his gaze was a question sharp as a blade. Cutter forced himself up on shaking arms, met the elder's eyes, and nodded once. He had nearly drowned, but he would not bow. The elder studied him a long moment, then rose and returned to his horse. A faint murmur passed among the riders, as though some silent judgment had been reached. They rode on. By nightfall, they camped in a canyon where the walls glowed red beneath the dying sun. Fires sparked to life, smoke curling into the twilight. Cutter sat apart first, teeth chattering from the river's chill, his shirt stiff with salt. Hunger gnawed him raw. He had not eaten since the scrap of bread. The elder came again, placed before him a strip of dried meat and a skin of water. Cutter took them, ate slow, never looking away from the man. The elder finally spoke, voice deep, measured. His English was rough, heavy with accent, but clear. You gave all. Saddle, gun, boots, everything. He gestured with a hand, palm open. Why? Cutter chewed, swallowed, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Because I had nothing left to keep. The elder's eyes narrowed. Many men fight to hold. You let go. It wasn't a choice, Cutter said, voice low. Life took it from me. I only signed the paper. Silence. Fire cracked. The elder leaned closer. We watched. In you, no anger. No fight. Only stillness. That is strength, not weakness. Cutter blinked, stunned. He had thought his surrender a mark of shame. To hear it called strength unsettled him. The elder straightened, spreading his blanket across his knees. You are not finished, white man. You are beginning. From the shadows, warriors watched, some nodding faintly, others with suspicion. But none laughed, none mocked. Cutter lay awake long after, staring into the fire. The words circled in his skull, not weakness, strength. As sleep crept upon him, a new sound rose, low at first, then swelling. The drum beat, faint but steady, carried on the wind through canyon walls. Horses stirred. Warriors rose to listen. The elder lifted his chin, eyes glittering with firelight. Cutter shivered, not from cold but from the weight of it. This was not the sound of war. It was something older, deeper, a summons. Hoofbeats followed, many more than he had seen that morning. The canyon trembled with their approach. Shadows of riders stretched long against the walls, joining the circle. Dozens became hundreds. Cutter sat frozen, firelight flickering across his face. He felt the earth itself shifting beneath him, the echo of something greater than men, greater than hunger or pride. The elder's voice carried through the night, quiet but sharp. The $2 you hold are not coins. They are fire, and fire spreads. Cutter gripped the coins in his pocket, knuckles white, heart hammering. The riders poured in, their silhouettes endless against the moonlit stone. The canyon filled with the sound of snorting horses, rattling weapons, and the deep thrum of drums that seemed to strike not just ears, but the marrow of bones. Cutter understood then. He had not been taken prisoner. He had been chosen. And whatever was coming, the world would not forget it. The canyon thundered with the sound of hoofbeats. What had begun as a circle of a few dozen warriors had swelled into hundreds, their silhouettes stretching tall against the firelit walls. The air smelled of wood smoke, leather, and horse sweat, heavy with anticipation. The ground itself quivered under the sheer weight of their gathering. Samuel Cutter sat by the fire, stiff with awe and terror. His bare feet curled against the dirt, his skin tight from the cold river water, still clinging to him. He gripped the 2 coins in his pocket as though they were lifelines. He had never seen so many riders in one place, each one armed, each one fierce, their faces painted, eyes burning like coals. The Apache elder, tall even among his people, stepped forward. His shadow stretched across the fire, swallowing Cutter in its length. His blanket shifted in the wind, its red patterns glowing like blood. He lifted his staff high, the feathers tied to it fluttering in the smoke. Silence fell over the canyon. Not a horse snorted, not a man coughed. Even the wind seemed to bow to the weight of his voice. This man, he began, words broken but sharp in English, gave all. He did not fight for things. He let go. He carried no greed, no fear, only truth. The words rolled like stones over Cutter. He lowered his head, shame and confusion knotting inside him. To him, it had not been truth. It had been defeat. He had sold his last belongings not because he wanted to, but because there was nothing left to do. Yet here, in this canyon, among hundreds of Apache, it was seen as something else entirely. The elder turned in a slow circle, addressing the gathered riders. The white men take land, cattle, water. They fight for gold. Always take. This one, he gestured at Cutter, his hand steady as a blade, gave. A murmur rippled through the crowd, not of laughter, not of mockery, but of assent. Cutter felt the weight of it in his chest, as though the whole canyon pressed against him. Then came the sound of distant thunder, not from the sky, but from the plains beyond. Hoofbeats, different in rhythm, sharper, more organized. The riders shifted, heads turning toward the canyon's mouth. Cutter's blood froze. Cavalry. Dust plumed in the distance where the canyon opened into open prairie. The glint of sunlight caught on rifles, sabers, blue coats. The U.S. Army had come, drawn by the sight of so many Apache gathered in one place. To the soldiers, it would look like war preparations, an uprising. To Cutter, it meant death, unless something changed. The Apache bristled, hands gripping weapons. Bows creaked, rifles clicked. The war drums quickened, heart beat fast. Horses stamped the ground, ready to surge. The elder raised his hand, but the tension could not be stopped now. The cavalry had seen them. The canyon walls carried the echo of bugles. Cutter's heart hammered, like a nail struck again and again. He rose to his feet, shaking. Every eye turned to him. The Apache warriors, the elder, even the soldiers at the canyon's edge. Cutter felt the fire's heat on his back, the chill of dawn creeping over the ridge. He was no soldier, no leader. He was a broken rancher who had sold his boots for bread. Yet here, somehow, the world demanded something from him. The elder's gaze met his. Steady, expectant, Cutter stepped forward, his bare feet cutting on stone. He walked between the fire and the gathered riders, into the open stretch of canyon where the soldiers could see him. The bugle call died. Dust swirled around him, golden in the rising sun. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in declaration. His voice cracked as he forced it out, but it carried through the canyon, loud and raw. "I am not your enemy," he shouted toward the ridge where the cavalry waited. "Look at me. Does this look like war?" He spread his arms wide, thin and ragged, shirt clinging to his ribs. The sight of him, barefoot, half-starved, standing before hundreds of Apache as though one of them, was stranger than any soldier could make sense of. A pause. A ripple of hesitation ran through both sides. The elder came to stand beside him, tall, immovable. He did not speak to the soldiers, only to his people, in words Cutter couldn't understand. The drum ceased. The canyon filled with silence again, thicker, heavier than any gunfire. Then the elder lifted his staff high and slammed it into the ground. A roar followed, not of rage, but of unity. The riders spurred their horses, circling Cutter in a great sweep. Dust exploded upward, hooves thundering, the ground quaking as hundreds of Apache rode around him, faster and faster, their cries echoing through the stone walls. It was not an attack. It was a ceremony, a tribute. The cavalry watched from the ridge, frozen, uncertain. To fire into such a storm of dust and horseflesh would be suicide. To retreat would be weakness. And so they sat, rifles ready but unused, as the canyon shook with the Apache army's thunderous ride. Cutter stood at its center, choking on dust, eyes burning, heart shattering with the force of it. He felt the ground tremble through his soles, felt the wind of passing horses whip against his face. It was as though the earth itself had risen to carry him, to prove that a surrender had been something greater than loss. When the riders finally slowed, pulling their mounts to the edges of the canyon, Cutter could barely stand. His legs trembled, chest heaved. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. His face bore no smile, no softness, only truth. "You are not broken," the elder said. "You are seen." And for the first time in years, Samuel Cutter believed it. The sun crested over the ridge, spilling gold into the canyon. The cavalry remained, but they did not descend. They watched silent, then slowly wheeled their horses and withdrew across the prairie, their bugle calls faint and uncertain. What they had seen was not war. It was something they could not name, something they would not dare challenge. The Apache dismounted one by one, forming a circle around the fire once more. The elder spoke to them in his language, voice deep and commanding. Cutter understood nothing of the words, yet he felt their meaning. He felt in the way the warriors' faces turned toward him with solemn respect. A young warrior brought him a pair of moccasins, setting them before him with a bowed head. Another laid a blanket across his shoulders. A third handed him a piece of roasted meat, hot from the fire. Cutter's throat tightened. These were not gifts. They were symbols. A man who had sold everything for $2 was being given back more than he had ever owned: dignity, belonging. He sat among them, the warmth of fire and food filling him for the first time in months. The elder spoke again, softer now, almost to Cutter alone. "Your story will not end here," he said. "It will be told. The white men will remember what they saw. They will not know the words, but they will know the truth." Cutter stared into fire, flames licking high, sparks spiraling into morning light. He thought of his wife, his son, the ranch lost a drought, the laughter of men at the trading post. He thought of the 2 coins still clutched in his palm, and he realized they no longer burned. They no longer cursed. They had been transformed. The night before, he had been a man with nothing. Now he was a man with a story, one the world would carry long after he was gone. The riders began to chant, voices low and strong, a rhythm that echoed with the beating of hooves, the flow of rivers, the wind through canyons. Cutter closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. He did not know their words, but he felt them in his marrow. When the chant ended, silence returned. The elder stood, raised his staff once more, and spoke the final words Cutter will remember until his dying day. What is given in truth echoes longer than what is taken in greed. The circle broke. Horses were saddled. The army dispersed, flowing from the canyon like water through a wide plain, vanishing into horizon light. Cutter remained by the fire, moccasins on his feet, blanket across his shoulders, coins in his hand. He was no longer Samuel Cutter the rancher, nor Samuel Cutter the beggar. He was Samuel Cutter, the man whose surrender had shaken the earth. The narrator's voice would close a tale years later, in some other town, by some other fire. So, what do we take from this story? That a man's worth ain't in what he holds, but in what he's willing to let go. Samuel Cutter sold his life for $2, and the Apache answered with thunder. Maybe that's a lesson. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to be seen. And if this tale moved you, don't forget to share it, because stories like this, they're meant to echo,